Hello. Happy full moon, happy lunar eclipse. Welcome to this conversation with the incredible Mina Aidoo. Just was having some tech difficulties and we are still in Mercury retrograde. Let me quickly introduce Mina and get her on. Um, Mina Aidoo is a mama artist and trauma resolution practitioner. Her journey involves turning down a major West End world tour in order to find herself drinking plant medicine, shaving her head, learning all about sacred sexuality, and releasing a book of poetry. Her debut anthology, Inky Black Women, went to #1 on the Amazon African Literature chart. She helps women and femmes to heal the body, helping them to release past trauma, including childhood, generational, and ancestral trauma, so that they can overcome depressive states and behavioral patterns that are keeping them stuck and step into their true magnificence, their authentic pleasure. She offers workshops, one-on-one sessions, the Black Women Somatic practice group, which we talked about the last time I had a conversation with her on a live, and a space specifically created for Black women and femmes to be held together in health and wholeness. Okay, let me bring her on. Oh gosh, I hope she's on. I know I got a little bit delayed as I was setting things up. I was traveling all day yesterday. Gosh, let's see. Mina, are you here? Oh, the tech, I moved these. Oh, it says she's unable to join. Mina, if you're here, can you request to be added and then I can let you in? It's not letting me add you. I see you're on. So I moved these Instagram lives. I was doing them quite often. I love them. I love having these conversations. So I was doing them like at a certain point, like twice a week. And I decided I wanted to slow it down a little bit. And then I decided to follow the moon cycle, which I love. And oh my gosh, Mina, where are you? Okay, I keep inviting Mina. Okay, Mina, I hope you can get on. And so I moved it to the moon cycle, and I'm realizing it's made it very exciting to say the least. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this one will work.
We got there in the end.
Yes! Oh my goodness. So so good to see you. I'm like, Mina, like, I know you're out there messaging earlier. And I was just trying to say, like, I don't know how this is going to go. I still, like, I have this passion for moon cycle and like new moon and full moons. Last year I was doing little workshops, little like 2 to 3 hour workshops on the around the moon cycle, and I'm not doing those, and I thought I'll move these conversations to follow that, and it is like tech difficulties. And the last one, I had scratched my eye. I had a corneal abrasion, so it was like totally, it was in this, you know, kind of, it was, my eye was just tearing the whole time. And then we were having sound difficulties with my guest. And it was just like, oh my gosh, these are following the moon cycle is not for the faint of heart. Oh.
But you did it. You did it anyway.
So good to have you. How are you?
I'm good, you know.
Yes.
I'm just like, yeah, life's a lot.
Yes.
And we're here. And yeah, can we just drop into this conversation and be together for some amount of time?
Yes. Yes. And now when we last talked, I forget the actual date even, but I chose Earth Day. We were communicating, we were like, let's do it on Earth Day. But it was was it a month ago or so? Because it was before your, or a few weeks anyway, it was before your program was launching.
Yeah, so I want to say maybe 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Life, like,
I
just
know.
going like that. It's just going like that. I'm just trying to keep up, really. That's what I can really say.
Never a dull moment. Let's see. There's so much that you and I can talk about, and I will just mention with this series, this Sensual Sovereignty Burn the Box series, which I think now this is like the 15th one. So it's that's just like moving along also. And it was about sensual sovereignty, which I describe as embodied love, liberation, and the license to expand the expression of our true essence. And then for my first guest, Cosmos, this idea of burning boxes, of like stepping outside of boxes, smashing boxes, burning boxes, however that looks, as we expand our essence. Like, this is what kind of this really broad like theme has been. And so I'm curious what resonates with you about that. And also wanted to share that I've mentioned already, when you and I first connected, we kind of offline, off the Instagram line. Because then we've had a whole live too, where we talked about our journeys more. But our paths and our experiences with doing the kind of work that we've done, and we've done different things, you know, a different way, on our own, different teachers, different people, but have been doing like embodiment work, sensuality, sexuality work, healing work, in predominantly white spaces. And I know that really came up when we first connected, which was a while ago now. Like you say about time. I'm just like, when was that? I don't remember now. So,
who knows? Could have been last year, could have been this year. Who knows? Don't know. Don't know anymore.
I know, right? It feels like, oh, that could have been a few years ago, you know, but it was sometime in this last year. Anyway, let me just, what's alive for you here? And Go with it.
So, first of all, thank you for having me
Oh,
on here.
thank
I
you.
really loved our last conversation. And I just love how, like, just kind of feels off the cuff, which I quite like. Just like, let's just see what comes. Let's just see what comes. Um, which I love. And I feel like this subject is so huge. It is so huge that it's like, where do we even start? Where do we even start with this? Um, and I think when I think about it, I really think back to, the beginnings of the journey, or the point when you're kind of starting to explore healing work.
Yes.
Perhaps outside of, maybe you found a book, or maybe you've, following someone online. And it's when you start to sort of go into actual spaces, whether that's online spaces or offline spaces. And, I've been doing healing work for like a number of years now. As you know, it's like it can be a never ending journey. Can be, it doesn't have to be, but can be.
It can be.
And it can be. I can feel like it is always and ever
Right, right.
ongoing work. Will I ever be fixed? Will I ever be fixed? Please fix me. Um, and that's the energy. It's like when you're first beginning and you're just desperate and you feel so broken,
Mm-hmm.
and like really feeling into that. And if anyone is at that place, it's like just massive, massive compassion, because it's horrible. It can
Mm-hmm.
feel really, really fucking dark.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so when you're in that space, you just want the help, right? You just want help.
Yeah.
And so you're seeking outside of yourself. And at that time, what I was seeing were, white spaces and white people. So I'm like, okay, let's go, let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just sort of like taking what you can get, because that's what you see in front of you.
Yes.
Um, and also, I've been doing this work for a long time, especially like with the sexual healing work is kind of how I got into this.
Yes.
And this was like, what was this like? This was like 2000s or something. This is like a
Okay.
long time ago, right?
Right.
And so it's like, like, yeah, 2005, 2000, mid 2000s.
Yeah.
So at that time, it was like, even finding any kind of sexual healing work online was
Yes.
like, couldn't even find, really couldn't
Right.
find many people, right?
Right.
So it was like, right, if I find someone and they say they can help, then off
Mm-hmm.
we go. And so I was grateful, you're grateful for anyone that can offer you something.
Yeah.
And so I just want to, say that. And I want to say that as you go on the journey and you start to do the work, um, then it's as you move on, you start to notice patterns, or you start to see, oh, that might not have been the best place for me, or
Mm-hmm.
oh, after I did that workshop, I was just like dead for 3 weeks. You know what I mean? Or oh, after you start to be able to notice the things that maybe weren't so great for you, or the harm that was caused after
Mm-hmm.
the fact.
Yes.
And so in today's times now, there's much more options. There's
Mm-hmm.
much more people talking about it, many people online. Hey Maya, say hi to Maya. And it's great. There's so many more options.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that women of color, Black women, are on this journey of doing their healing, so that more Black spaces, more POC spaces, women of colour spaces are opening up for healing, because there's definitely an aspect that is just not there in white spaces or even mixed spaces. There's something that there is a kind of a space that's created when you have, someone that has more of an idea of the conditions that you're living in, you know? And so, for instance, we talked about when you go to some other spaces and they're like, screen your anger or something like that. And I've always been like, really? Like, do you really want me as a Black woman right now to really scream my anger? Is that I don't think you really want me to do that. I don't think you really want me to do that. I think you want me to perform screaming my anger, right? Because if I really did it,
Yes,
it wouldn't be received well. Like, and also there's a relational piece, which is like, I don't trust that you can hold my anger. Do you know what I mean?
right,
And actually, I don't want to become angry around white people for a
right,
myriad of reasons, right? So
right.
that's just some of the things that we're dealing with,
Yes.
that is not part of often the spaces that I've seen. It's the understanding there. So the more you go on this journey, and the more you notice, And I feel like a lot of it actually is performative, to be honest. I can't say that across the board, but
Right,
when you're there and you're feeling othered anyway, there's this gap, right,
right.
between you and the rest, because you're feeling othered. And so you're watching, but you're not. I can't say that I was ever fully in it because I'm already othered.
Yes,
So there's this space that you're existing in, which, well, speak for myself, which prevented me from really touching in.
right.
There wasn't the relational piece there. It felt performative. I was already othered. I didn't trust what I was bringing could actually be held. The layers that I was bringing could not be held in those spaces, you
Right.
know. And so my body is not. I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
The body is infinitely intelligent. I'm just not going to go there.
Yes. Oh, thank
That's just like one piece.
you. In those few moments, oh gosh, Shelly, oh my gosh, I can't even see this. Shelly is saying she agrees.
Yeah,
in,
I agree too, Shelley. I agree too.
I agree too. So it's like, yeah, what you spoke to as you were speaking, there was just so much, like there was so much that was coming up within me of resonance and just so many avenues that to take with this exploration. Just even from the very beginning, how you spoke to there weren't that many people out there doing the work, and I think yes, I'm so grateful now that there are more women of color, Black women doing this kind of work. I think that it speaks to like colonization, like the energy, colonizing energy, like this white supremacist energy, like these kind of energies that allow white people to step into these roles, like I'm the teacher, follow me, that kind of thing, and to put themselves out there more freely. So that's what we see and have available to us to begin with. I wasn't even looking into sensuality work, sexuality work until much later. So more like, actually the teacher I worked with, I found her in 2015. but then I just ignore it. That speaks to my own, like, there's my own stuff of just like my own suppression of a lot of things, you know. And then when I was ready to do the work, I at least felt like there was just there was a bit more trust there than like going into, I did have option. I was living in Asia at the time, so I did have an option to go on some kind of tantra retreat or some kind of thing like that. Like Thailand, for example, wasn't very far away. At the same time, that felt way more scary because then I didn't know what, because they were also white led. You know, it was mainly white led, but then it was like in space and men and women, and where I'm like, I don't know what this is, you know. So it felt more comfortable to go with someone who I'd found before, who I at least was like, and I could just be in my own space, you know, and do it that way. But yeah, that was just occurring to me of just the basic of who's available, who's stepping out to offer this kind of work. I think says a lot that, you know, even if some of the work has roots in Black and Indigenous cultures, it's like that's not what we see, you know. So just speaking to that, and then there's so many things.
Well, could I just say a piece about that?
Please do.
Like the thing about, you know, who's stepping out,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, okay, so what's the, you know, why, you know, the thing about colonization and the sort of teacher role,
Yes.
you know, if there's a kind of like an implicit kind of agreement that which there has been for many years.
Yes.
I say agreement in a very general way.
Yes.
That, you know, whites step out in this way,
yeah.
and they're accepted and they can do very well. And so, okay, you see that. So, okay, cool. So that's already a setup, right? And then you have someone like you or someone like me, I speak for myself. But the work it's taken me to be able to step out as a Black woman, huge, right? The levels of like repression and cultural and generational that and what have you, and I don't even have the words, but we all know what I'm talking about, right? Like what it takes for a woman of color, especially a woman of color or a Black woman, to step out and say, "Here I am, look at me." You to get to feel somewhat safe to do that, it's huge. It's already a massive journey, right? And
Yes.
so I'm not surprised, you know,
Right.
the time it takes and the journey you have to go on to be able to say, look at me, I have something to say and I can help and I want to help and I've been on this journey. And then I've been speaking all of my shit onto the internet. Even that has been like a massive thing for me, right? So I'm just
Yes.
like out here speaking my shit on the
Yeah.
internet. And that's taken a long time, you know, a long time. And so, and there's a piece here as well that I want to speak to. The kind of the roots of the work, you know, which have been colonized. Maybe we could say that maybe in a general way, right?
Yes.
And also, there's something about existing. Well, I'll speak for myself. In the way that I've been existing, I could see that there were teachers, like, you know, over in Ghana, or they had books, or there was an aspect of this, or perspective of this, which is much more from my heritage, you know. But as who has existed in London and don't speak the language, that was not something I could go to. You know, there's things there for me, but I can't access them right now at this moment. And maybe at some point on my timeline, on this journey, those things will be like, this is the right next thing. But for me and how I've grown up, it's like, if I try, I could go there, and there would be some kind of gap that I would have to navigate, right? So it's like, okay, maybe that's not for me right now, but maybe one day it will be.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, this feels like something I can actually get into right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also that the people who are existing in the in-between spaces,
Mm-hmm.
we we're existing, with all of the way we've grown up, with our background, and we're taking the next right steps that's right for us right now. And so that might be a version, that maybe isn't. Um, it might be a more. I don't necessarily want to say colonized, but we're doing the right next step for us,
That's right.
for our beings. And there are other things out there, and in right timing, perhaps they'll
Mm-hmm.
become right. Remember, you talked about going to study in India,
Yeah.
but it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing. So Sri Lanka is where my family's from. So I went there, um, 2017. That was where I went. Not, not thinking about sensuality, sexuality work was more Ayurveda, like healing related to yogic tradition, and it's rooted in India, but it has roots also in Sri Lanka, like that medicine kind of um, went to Sri Lanka as well thousands of years ago. And I was similarly, as you mentioned, like I don't speak the language fluent, and I barely can just what's spoken in the house, that kind of thing. And I was trying to learn the language, but it was never going to be where I could, you can't jump from like, and was that like a young child level, the language to get to actually learn something far more complicated and all of that. So yeah, I was at a disadvantage for sure to actually learn and delve into it in a way that I think would have been really beautiful to do. um, Go back to some like these scriptures were written on these like palm leaves, and like there's there's a lot there, but I was really kind of trying to do what I can, and then in the end took this other turn, found this sexuality work from a white teacher who was from the US, but I was all the way over there. It's just like this. It's just kind of how it happened.
Right.
But I really appreciate what you're bringing up in terms of we take the next step. We take what we can access and go from there. I feel like for me, then finding myself in that space, to speak to what you first said. Oh my gosh, it's taken years to come out and be somewhat comfortable, or at least willing. I should just not even say comfortable, just say willing to
Really.
put it out there, be like, this is who I am, this is the work I want to offer, this is what I've done. It's very deep work, because for a while I had this particular Instagram account. I owned it for a whole year plus with one post. And it just, because it was terrifying to me, like, what am I going to put out there? What am I going to say? So that in itself is a process. And then being in the space that I entered, and yes, it came from a white teacher who I'm very grateful for, that she was really putting the work out there. Layla Martin, I can speak to her. I'm still connected with her organization. And I'm very grateful that she had that ability to just put it out, like her YouTube channel, like all these things, like her work was very much out there so that I could find it. And then interestingly, that all led on a path of, for me to shed layers or go deeper. As you mentioned, there's so many layers there. There's layer upon layer of family stuff and cultural stuff and ancestral stuff, and so much there between where I was and where I was desiring to explore and experience. But it was the next step for me. It was like a step that I took that was accessible to me, that brought me to Mexico. Now this is where I'm living. Like it opened things up, but it also allowed for me, my journey this path brought me into much more deeper awareness of these, of colonization, of, you know, like capitalism, patriarchy, white supremacy, all of all these oppressive um, forces. That's kind of how I say it, like forces. I don't know how you to say it, like, but systemic oppression. You know, that was already in existence for my life, but I didn't really understand the impact that was having on my body and on my connection to my own body, into that connection. But it took this kind of path for me, for that to happen.
Yeah. And it's really a path, it's really a journey. You take the right next step and you trust that it will guide you to
Yeah.
where, you know, where you're going. And so yes, the white spaces, yes, the performativity, yes, all the things, the, you know, capitalism and the white supremacist capitalism, all the reasons why the spaces, some spaces that I've been in have not been great. And yet we're here, you know, it's led us here. So just compassion, you know, you take the right next step and you
Mm-hmm.
trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
I wanted to reflect back or speak to what you brought up in the beginning
Mm-hmm.
about that awareness of being othered in a space when you're trying to do this, your own work, and the awareness that the space, even though there's an invitation, or there's something being asked, the awareness that is perhaps dropping much deeper than even what our mind can conceptualize, right? But awareness may be in the body. Okay, I'm just using my own words now for myself. The awareness in the body of that the space can't hold
Mm-hmm.
the an authentic experience.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that I think that says a lot. That kind of that concept, you know, kind of just being in a space, feeling othered, and also feeling, yeah, this performance, that it's really, there's a performative aspect of it. Like people may be looking to, as people of color in these spaces, people may be looking to us to like, okay, well, what's going to come, you know, from it, but it's not necessarily like, there's nothing like really authentic about that or genuine to allow what could actually come forth. um I think for me it's and being in these spaces, and now like most of the work I was doing was online, but there were times where I was live in like retreat with others, and yes, definitely white predominance in the spaces. um I think this says a lot to the work that we can actually, like what we can actually do in those spaces that's different for women of color, for Black, Indigenous, you know, people, that's different when you're part of the majority.
Mm-hmm. You're asking what we can do when we're in white spaces.
Yeah, like I'm just, I guess, commenting on how the experience is so different
Mm-hmm.
when we are in the other category, you know, because we don't have that freedom to like, there's something, I know for me, there's something that just holds me back. And that's also, I'm not just saying it for being a person of color. I think also it's my own personality and my own like self-consciousness, and that can come from a whole lot of different things, you know, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
I found it, I found it a challenge, you know, an added challenge to already something that's going very deep, can go very deep, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think I love to kind of reframe things.
Mm.
And doing the work that I do now, somatic work I do now,
Yes.
the thing you mentioned about holding me back, or something that
Mm-hmm.
holds me back,
Mm-hmm.
now look at as body intelligence. I now look at as that's the awareness of, can this space hold me?
Yeah.
Mm, maybe no. So I'm gonna hold back, or I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
allow.
Mm-hmm.
In my work, my teacher calls it the body security system.
Yes, you mentioned that.
So and it's infinitely intelligent, right? It's
Yeah.
infinitely intelligent. And so as people of color, we know, like, even if we don't necessarily always know here, or we think we know, our body does know.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
we can smell bullshit a mile away. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so when it comes to these, when it comes, we've been spelling it for many, many, many years suddenly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Many, many years.
Very honed in on that.
Very honed. The nose is very honed. And so when it comes to this kind of a work, and we when we feel we don't feel a relational trust,
Mm-hmm.
that relational piece actually I find has been key, like, because people can set up these spaces, and it can be great,
Mm-hmm.
but if our body security system doesn't feel a deep sense of trust,
Mm-hmm.
and of, I don't want to say holding, but something like the space can hold what you're bringing,
Yeah.
it's not going to go there, or it's going to become performative. And so I just really want to honor. I want to honor the bullshit detector, and I want to honor the thing about it. And yeah, maybe there is holding back, but there can also be holding back for like a really good reason. And oftentimes, from what I know now and the spaces that I'm in now, it takes a lot of attention and intentionality to set up spaces that allow the deeper healing.
Yeah.
And in general, what I'm noticing is, like, a one-off workshop can be great, but the deep healing that happens over time may need that relational piece.
Yes.
And so, for instance, I've been to somatic experiencing practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
We've had like 3, 5, 9 sessions, however many. And it did something, it did help, but I had a white practitioner, and I always had this awareness of I'm here as a black woman and you're a white woman practitioner. And in the way of the setup of the kind of modality that it is, there's this, I don't want to say therapist patient role, but there's this role and that role, and so you're kind of in the roles.
Yeah.
And as a black woman with a white woman, I'm not just in a role. It's suddenly all the other layers of everything else outside the space are also inside the room. And so trying to heal in that kind of dynamic has been very difficult for me. And because there wasn't work done, I'm not saying there should be, but in this modality, it's not the way to make space for, or talk about, or allow for those layers to be there, and
Mm-hmm.
to come up, so that we can get to the work. And
Mm-hmm.
so those layers being there, I could only go so far. My
Mm-hmm.
awareness would let me go some way, but it wouldn't let me go as deep as I would like, just because of the setup of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So already there was this dynamic, right?
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes, I think there's also capitalism comes in, because people are, offering work, and it's workshops, and it's this, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, and you're under constraints, maybe like time constraints, um, financial constraints. There's things that come in that oftentimes take over, or there's not necessarily a knowledge of how to build in foundation of of support, safety, and health
Mm-hmm.
in relationship over time,
Mm-hmm.
which is how, for me, the deepest work has happened.
Yes.
And to I think to offset that, what happens is a lot of the work becomes cathartic, so that people can feel like, okay, I've got my money's worth. Something happened. I've got
Right.
my money's worth. But often, this cathartic way of healing, it is just it's a spike, and sometimes you go and then you just crash. You go up and then you just crash, rather than it being this slow, gradual, doable pieces over time with a foundation,
Mm-hmm.
which is what leads to permanent transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different layers to this, and I think the setup of how healing
Yeah.
workshops without the relational piece being there, and the thing about wanting results now, there's layers to this, doesn't necessarily help
Mm-hmm.
this kind of body security system. In my experience, the work that I'm doing now, which is slow over time with relational piece involved,
Yes.
has been the way that I've been able to make change and really do this work on a deeper
Yes.
level.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm. Yes. Um, there's so much, there's so much again that you shared in that. And I also have done some, like I was just reflecting as I was hearing you that I had a somatic experiencing practitioner who I went to a couple of years ago, and we had many sessions over some time. And this was a white woman, and I do feel like I benefit. I mean, there was benefit to it for me, and but I'm also, and but I don't know, and I'm also aware of what you shared about that body security system, which we've talked about before. You mentioned it the last time we talked, and that infinite intelligence, and that like the layers that things are happening in, and perhaps a very deeply protective part of us that will not really allow, that will not let the guard down, completely. Um, and how that this dynamic is likely, I'm sure it's showing up. I'm sure it shows up over and over again, and that there's multiple layers to it. Yes, there's capitalism that comes in. There's like our quick fix, like we've got to get results. We've got to have a result in this 1 hour. Like something has to happen that that says that this is working, that validates the whole experience. Um, I I will say that in my experience with the somatic experiencing practitioner, that I did appreciate that we could talk about this. She and I did
Mm,
talk about this, and she came back. So I still had several sessions with her, but it helped me to know that she was aware of this too, that she's a
mm,
white woman, that I'm a woman of
great.
color, and that I was doing this other work too, where I was, this is over time, like honing in. At that time, I wasn't saying that I was only working with women of color. I was working with kind of all women, but that I was going through my own process with this. So she did early on offer a list of referrals
Wonderful.
of Black, Indigenous women of color doing somatic experiencing, and I did reach out to one of them, and I had a few sessions with that person as well, which was a totally different experience. And it kind of, we could bring it in. I'm curious if what your experiences or what your thoughts are about having that conversation when this dynamic is there, and what that does. It's still just really at the mind level. I mean, really, to kind of bring it in.
Hmm.
Does that really allow us to go deeper or not? No.
I don't know that I've really ever had the conversation.
Okay.
Like in the spaces that I've been in, it's not been an awareness. I it's not really been that much of an awareness. There has been attempts in some of the white spaces that I've been in online,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where they've had groups and different people leading different groups, women of color
Mm-hmm.
leading black women leading black women's group and stuff. So there's attempts to do it,
Yes.
and I do appreciate when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels quite rare. It feels newish that is now becoming more of a
Yep.
thing. Um, in the space that I'm in now, it is a white space, but my teacher, she's Latvian.
Mm.
And so there's something about that is not the same, you know?
Yeah.
And it's very much a relational
Mm.
field that we're in. It's a group relational field.
Yeah.
And she is very much in touch with her cultural root.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes in as part of the things,
Mm.
um, which I really appreciate. Um, and there is definitely, in the way that she offers the work, there is definite understanding and support for um, indigenous, you know, healers, people coming to that work. She
Yeah.
offers things like scholarships and things like that. So there is an understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she creates a field where you can say the way she creates the field, you know that the field can hold it.
Yeah.
And that is partly why the work is so powerful,
Yeah.
because that intentionality, that experience, that
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, that wisdom that she has
Mm-hmm.
brings it brings all of her wisdom in how to build a relational field to allow
Mm-hmm.
that to happen. It's in the space.
Mm. Yes. Yes, that sounds beautiful. And it sounds like what you were speaking to what you're offering now in your group of
Mm.
I mean, I you're as a black woman offering it to black women, but the relational piece, the piece about that relationship and the intentionality and moving slowly, as you mentioned, like how this can all impact the process and deepen the process.
Yeah, and there's really a wisdom
Mm-hmm.
that comes in. So my teacher Bridget, she refers to the style of work as yin whispering style.
Yes.
And so it's like a world away from like masculine capitalist sort of like selling, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that way of
Mm-hmm.
doing things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there has been a clash for me when I'm in those spaces that feel very much like that. My body, if that energy is carried through the space,
Mm-hmm.
the way my body bumps up against it, it's not quite the thing. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel completely aligned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like the way that Bridget like markets, for instance, like people, you would barely know it's there. You know what I mean? But people are drawn to it, and so you really have a somatic experience from the beginning. Like the whole thing is like body led, and
Yeah.
that just continues through the whole thing, the whole thing basically. And so you really get a sense from the beginning of having that deep bodily experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite quiet, you know.
Mm.
And I've forgotten the question, but I think I'm answering it.
Keep going.
I was just like, yeah, 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 yeah. Um, Oh, talking about, no, we finished that bit. Talking about the I can't remember, but yeah, the, there's an authenticity there
Yes. Yes.
that your body actually feels like it can, in right timing,
Yeah.
go to the places
Yes.
that it desires to go to
Yeah.
in time.
Yes. Yeah. So we were talking about the relational piece, the intentional piece,
Mm,
slowness, and that's when you were mentioning this yin whispering. So I love
yeah.
that. I'm very yin drawn or yin embodied myself. So, and my teacher is a very young, and so like I have noticed that over time, just like I it's a bit it sometimes it can be great, like it can be
Mm,
very powerful and very like you know inspiring, kind of like a jolt of electricity, kind of coming through. But it also, at times it can feel jarring. At times it can
yeah.
feel like, oh, I just want to go slow. I just want to go slow.
Mm,
um,
mm,
Slow, subtle, just like surrender, like these S words. That's kind
yeah.
of what I'm naturally drawn to. And yet, at times, yes, I think that power, having something that's like much more young, can be good. But I know for myself, I need a lot more space. I need a lot more
Mhm.
time to integrate.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, just speaking to that, I suppose. But I
Yeah.
go ahead.
Um, I just had a thought about
Yeah.
that. Like, I think sometimes um, people that come or looking into it, if they really want a result, and they want the quick result, and so they're
Mm-hmm.
going for that sort of yang. Okay, this is what I need. Da, da, da.
Mm-hmm.
Yin, great, but I need to get a result now, so I'm going to go this
Yeah.
way, right? And what I want to say is, I have never had so many results from this kind of yin whispering style, right? Because I think
Uh-huh.
we think yin is just means flaccid and like no tone, just flaccid, right? But allowing myself to have the space somehow has deeply embodied me to be able to build the tone within that space. The tone
Mm-hmm.
is built like in a really organic way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the work I do is based on like nature, rhythms,
Mm.
times.
Yeah.
And so, it's like you think of
Mm-hmm.
the tree's not trying to be like all yang or all yin. It's just there, right? And we have the ability to have this really natural sense of tone, when we have the space for that naturally to arise and the timing for
Mm-hmm.
that to grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an either or thing. It's that having the space, the yin space, allowed the rest of it to come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. Space. Another S word.
Space, and and the work is not all just like, well,
No.
it's like it can be really like,
Yeah.
when it needs to be.
Yeah.
And so it's a tidal thing. We move between all both yin yang, all the
Yeah.
things, all the time, and we
Yes.
develop capacity for both and all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, so your space, we're May 15th. It started on May 1st, right?
Yeah,
Program. And how long is it going to continue for?
it's going until mid-September, so it's 5 months.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of space built in. It's like 2 calls a month
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
over 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And there's stillness practices, there's somatic meditations, there's also movement practices as well,
Mm-hmm.
with lots of space in between to co-create the thing, for me to listen in and be like, okay, what needs to happen now? And so it's kind of flowing, ebbing and flowing.
Yes.
And so yeah, I just love to make it. Like, let me make it longer.
Yeah.
Let me do it in a way that's not just like a chunk of your week. Let me try and see how I can get this to sort of support underneath, to flow like a river underneath your life. And you dip in, you come out. So it's that kind of, that's the kind of way I've designed it.
Yeah. Yes. I'm a yes to that approach.
Yes.
No, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I'm creating a space as well. This one is for women of color about pleasure temple. And it's 3 months. But I am very conscious of kind of what you're talking about of so it's not as long, and maybe like the next time I do it, like I'll make it longer or something, but want it to be enough. 3 months felt like a good amount of time, while also building in this for me what has come through in the work that I've done is the importance of building in this integration time in there. And so it's kind of like what you were saying about this river flowing really speaks to me as well, but just kind of I was thinking of it like sacred grounding spaces, you know, as we do things, as we do embodiment practices, as we do even as we have like group kind of process, or like I think of it like sensual alchemy, like this just for people to share and to hold that, but then having like a lot of time in there too, that it's slower, but slow in a way that can go deeper, you know, because we're not like bringing in too much in succession, but there's not time for that, like digesting, like a bodily digesting of things, you know.
It's so important. It's so important. I think as someone who like started doing sort of sexual healing work like in my like early 20s, I think. I can't remember. It's such a long time ago now. I like the thing that used to get me was like, you know, the 5 steps and the this and the that and da, 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 da. And it was just such like the opposite of how generally we get into pleasure. Do you know what I mean? It's like the two things weren't aligned. Like the steps were not in alignment with the true thing. You know? So it's that thing again about like how can we have authenticity the whole way through, so that when someone meets the work, they're meeting it in the rhythm and in the way that's going to benefit them as they go through the journey. Because for so long I was like, I'm following the steps, but I'm not feeling pleasure.
Yeah. You're supposed to
Where's
do
the pleasure?
something. What's supposed to happen here? Because I'm on step 3 and like nothing's happening.
I'm like, right, I've got half an hour to do this step. Okay, let's get it done. Do you know what I mean? You get the to do thing is more important than the actual thing.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
yeah, it's just so. There's a whole other conversation, but yeah, it's part 3. It's part 3 suddenly. The pleasure conversation.
We have to have another, you know.
We have to have another one because there's just so much wrong.
Oh my gosh, but I am so appreciating what you're sharing about this mismatch, this like disconnect, and it feels very like bringing in almost like a toxic masculine, like I want to say like this masculine energy that's not really healthy, not the part that's not very conducive to pleasure, you know, and like so it's about steps and it's about outcome, and it's not really how, I don't know, it's not really been my experience of how pleasure works.
Not mine. Not mine. This is
Oh my
like,
God.
this is so like, this is one of my pet peeves or big peeves. Like,
Mm,
just because people are so, wanting to sell the thing, and the way we're taught to sell is a certain way,
mhm,
but then it's just the opposite of the way of being that is
mhm.
conducive to pleasure. And so,
Yes,
I'm thinking about the way we don't value yin in the culture, right? We don't value slow, we don't value spaciousness, we don't value softness, we only value outcome, like measurable outcome.
yes,
And so, women's pleasure, the two, like, it's like we need to relearn how to be with ourselves, you
yes.
know, and then trying to do this work under capitalism, you're just not set up to succeed. You know what I mean? Like, you're just at every level trying to just survive, and that's not conditions for pleasure. And so this healing work, and like sexual healing work especially, there's a whole unlearning that has to
Mhm.
happen. It's not about just pleasure or sex.
Yeah.
It's like so much more than that. It's like a
Oh,
way of being with self, right?
ab-
And how we navigate self under the conditions that we're living
absolutely, absolutely. Oh, couldn't agree more. And that and that's where I think this idea, oh my gosh, Adrienne Marie Brown, pleasure activism, like this idea of our, especially as people of color, the experience of pleasure, which the authentic experience of pleasure is really um, a statement of, it's an expression of activism in itself, because it's been so, there are so many layers to go through,
in.
to unlearn, to shed, to release all of that, to in order to just experience it.
Yeah, yeah. And I love, like, this is something else as well I think about. For a lot of the women that I work with, it's so hard to put themselves first. And so they're always wanting to, you know, fight for a cause, or,
Mm-hmm.
join. It's never about them. It can't just be about them. It has to be about them
Mm-hmm.
doing something, right? Which is
Yeah,
great, which is great.
yeah.
And with the activism piece,
Mm.
especially Black women, there is something there that can make it more complex. So, I mean, I haven't read the book. I really do want to read it, and I bet I follow her. She's great. They are great. And I wanted to name that because I
Mm.
found that the people that I work with, populations that I work with, it can't ever just be about pleasure for them.
Yeah.
And I want to just say that and name it. And
Mm.
yeah, I want to name it. I think you know what I'm saying. I want
I
to name it.
do. I do, and I appreciate you naming it, very much so. I was just reminded of um, one of my friends who's also a coach, who's like like a mentor to me in ways. Who's been on this series as well, Nika Carly. I had a session with her, and I was going into it like to talk about this offering, and or to work with it, and I went in with this like, pleasure is the portal. Like, I had this idea, like, pleasure is the portal. And so pleasure, kind of like what we're saying, of just like how you have to delve into how it, like, pleasure, like kind of working with pleasure, experiencing pleasure, then brings forth like so many other things, our
Mm,
sovereignty, power, our, liberation, like all these, kinds of things, and kind of like activism, work. And it was it was just really interesting because it was eventually like it just came through our thing like, and what about just pleasure? Like for the
Mm,
experience of pleasure, for the sake of pleasure. And that really shifted everything that I was doing. And it made me realize also I was in that mindset, which is kind of like this, all these systemic things that we've been talking about where I thought that the pleasure had to be about something else. You know, like it had to be in service of something else. And like, actually, no, it doesn't.
so insidious, so
Right?
insidious.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm going to talk to you forever. We always have more things to talk about. I wonder if there's any more that wants to be said or like something else that we didn't. Maybe it's going to be a launching for our next one.
I think we didn't I don't think we really dived into the white
We didn't
spaces.
enough.
We didn't really.
It's just like we just touched it.
Just it went like, as it does. We just flowed with
As
it. We
it
flowed with it.
does.
Um,
As you
but
said.
you know what could be great if people like want to ask questions, um, and we could do another one where we have questions or something like that. So we don't, because when we get into the flow, we're just like la 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 la, and we just go right off topic. But it's great.
I feel like our yin comes together and is like, ooh, let's just, let's just flow from this to that to something else.
I know, I know. Maybe we need a little bit of structure. So it's like maybe a few questions next time. Maybe.
I think that's great. I have to figure out how to make that happen. But maybe like in a post or something, right? We can ask
Yeah,
um, something like that.
yeah,
I think that would be, yeah, that would be great to have some questions to work with. And I know we just touched that the whole idea of doing this work in white spaces and what that what that brings up, what is said sometimes and what's not, a lot of what's not said, and how that
mm,
impacts our experience. I know there's a lot more to say there.
there's so much more to say. There's so much more to say. Yeah, we can do it as a lead into your your program.
Yeah, yeah, that would be great. Pleasure and white spaces and what can come up, or how to create, well, you're doing it in your program, like how to create that, the intentionality, the relational pieces, and also have like-bodied individuals together.
Yeah, I mean, I've really learned from my teacher, Bridget. She's like
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like just because I'm a black woman
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that I won't cause harm.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just so many layers to this.
Yes.
And what it's taken me to be able to even say I'm going to have a group that's just for
Yes.
black women and
Yes.
femmes. That's a whole thing.
That is.
That's a whole thing. And in the end, it was as I do my work and I become more coherent and stronger in myself
Mm-hmm.
and what I'm here to do and what I am doing right now. It's like I could lean into what is in service of the group,
Mm-hmm.
what is in service of the work. And what's in
Mm-hmm.
service of the work right now is to
Mm-hmm.
have just for black women and femmes.
Yes.
So it wasn't so much about me anymore,
Right.
and yeah, I got some pushback. Yeah, and people would have thought what they would have thought, but it kind of doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter now. I've kind of passed that point. It doesn't
Yes.
matter. This is what's in service, and this is what I
Yes.
do.
Yes.
Um, and also, as I'm doing it, what do I have to, how intentional can I be? What do I have to do to try and make a semblance of a group that could be cohesive?
Yes.
Because there are people that it might not have been a right fit for.
Right.
And so it's not as simple as like making a sales page and then people signing up. Like I had to spend time to
Yeah.
have calls with
Yeah.
each person that applied, right? So it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
It takes
Mm.
extra time. It takes extra care.
Yeah.
It takes extra effort to create these kind of spaces.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something to really speak about because I
Yeah.
don't think that's always the case when we're creating space. It does take time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's also there's this thing about jump before you're ready, do it before you're ready, da 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 da, which is great, and like I would never have done this group like 3 years ago because I was not able to hold a group, this kind of group 3 years ago, you know. And there's so many people out there marketing to people who are doing work in the world. You'll never be ready, just, jump. And I'm saying, okay, and what about allowing time to develop skill?
Mm-hmm.
Not just skill, but also like your core self, your sense of self. Like if
Mm-hmm.
we're working in these kind of healing spaces, these spaces are really tender.
Yes.
They're really bringing their most vulnerable shit to you. you know.
Yes.
And it's like this isn't something to play with. It's not just like I'm just going to do this training and then become this person who can hold all the things. It's like, no, what steps am I going through? What am I thinking to myself?
Absolutely.
What am I doing in myself to truly be able to hold someone,
Yes.
and what they're bringing? It's not
Yeah.
game. It's not a game thing. It's not like I'm just, it's not just, I don't know. People are playing around and I'm just like,
No.
no,
No.
no, and so much harm is being done,
Yes. In the process. Yes. Oh my gosh.
so
It
much
has,
harm is being done because people are vulnerable. People are looking
yeah.
for help and healing
Mm-hmm.
and vulnerable. And
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the ways that I've been treated when I've gone looking for help have been
Mm-hmm.
appalling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like people actually take the time to contact you looking for help,
Mm-hmm.
and you haven't got the wherewithal, or you haven't been through the process enough in yourself to be able to meet even some intimate contact or
Mm-hmm.
and ask for help
Yeah.
appropriately with a vulnerable person.
Right. Mm.
And it's like, where's the care? Where, like, the care should be starting from the field, like your space around you. So
Yes.
when someone's entering into the space,
Yes.
there's a sense of care.
Yeah.
It's not about getting clients. It's
No, no.
about that at all, right? It's
Right.
like have I done my work to be able to meet this person?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much we could say.
There is so much we can say, and what just hit me with what you just brought up is you and I can talk about this, and I feel like, I mean, we're on different paths doing different things, but I felt like it's been a process. It's been years, since of being out there as a coach, like trying to do this work to like get to this point for myself as well. But what about white people who are holding these spaces? Like, what about their work to actually hold and invite in people of color into their spaces? Like, there is work to be done for sure. I will say, one of my teachers, Dr. Rocio Rosales Mesa, who does a lot of decolonial work right now. She has the space Decolonial Alchemy, which I'm really appreciating. She has an offering that is for it's like white healer. It's like people that are doing this kind of work, but haven't done their own work or have much more to do to be able to really hold the space in a decolonial way, and to attend to deeper levels, of all of this that we're talking about. But I'm sure there are other. I was saying it because she's my teacher as well, and I'm also like, wow, you
she's doing is she's feeling this calling to offer this. She also offers, you know, spaces for women and femmes of color, but she's offering this work to white people. But there's not that many people I know who are actually offering that work, and it has to be offered by BIPOC. Like it can't be offered by white people to, you know, to offer to other white people in a way that's actually going to be meaningful or have some impact, you know.
Yeah. I know Resma,
Yes.
Meckenham, he has a space, and I
Yes.
think Corinne Bell as well, I think, has a
Yes.
space.
Yes.
So these are spaces that I've dabbled with.
Yes. I've been in
And
there.
it's really great. You've been
Yeah,
in those
yeah, because
spaces.
Karine has space. I was in her space for about a year, and now Karine is one of the co-teachers of Resma's somatic abolitionism for therapists and coaches. And it does have white. It includes everyone, but they do it in such a very intentional, thoughtful way, you know, of bringing people together to avoid this, what you're talking about, of doing more harm. Like just people like raising their hand, like, oh, I haven't done this. I'm just going to throw myself in the ring to do this kind of work. And it's like, no, that's actually a terrible idea. I think, you know.
Right. Right. It's just so insidious. There's just so many layers, and it takes time, you know. And I think it's almost like now, if it's almost like a prerequisite, I
Yeah.
think, like,
Yeah.
because otherwise, the lack of awareness is just astounding. You know, it's astounding, astounding.
Yes. And the harm that is done.
And nothing is done.
When people are you know, they're coming with the vulnerability um, into a space to do their own healing. It's really
It gets really shadowy, I think, as well.
very much,
Spaces.
very much.
So shadowy.
Mm. Mm. Here we are on full moon eclipse. I know the eclipse happened, but we're right in this, like, in this work, in this, you know, shedding and stepping into different identities, and yes, shadow, doing the shadow work.
Yeah, what comes to mind is that I'm just so grateful for people who are offering spaces, like you say, your space, my space, and people who are offering spaces for white bodies to do
Yes,
work.
yes,
You know, it's I'm just so grateful that, you know, collectively everyone's efforts are starting to allow these spaces to appear.
yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and I think what what I really lean into is it takes effort and time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In this culture we live in, where it's all, you know, now, fast, here's the 5 steps, get the result,
Mm-hmm.
the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of work takes time, you
Mm-hmm.
know, learning takes time.
Yes, it does.
And I'm like, can we value yin spaciousness and
Yeah,
time and flexibility and creation, and, you know, can we value that, and can we invest over time in
yeah.
those values so that so that we can do our work
Mm-hmm.
over
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And everyone, of no matter who they are, like doing this kind of prerequisite work or their own inner work before opening up spaces for people. I think it's like, I hope that's becoming more of part of the culture of coaching and healing, and slowly.
Yeah, I really hope so. I really hope so. You know, it's not to say that people shouldn't do anything. It's like
Mm-hmm.
everyone can do something. It's like, what if you are a coach or healer, however you speak, your guide? you can do, what can you do now that's really easy for you, you know, that's gonna build foundation for growth over time.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
might not be the big group program, but it might be something else,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know, and like finding right timing, right
Mm-hmm,
rhythm, right relationship to the work, to yourself,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
is so important.
Mm. Yes. Oh, so good to be here with you, Mina. And I'm so excited about your program that's underway now. First half of the first month, I guess.
Yes, thank you so much. You really like supported me, so I want to say thank you for that.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and I will say I'm going to be opening it again later in the year, but
Okay.
there will be like a chance. I'll be talking about it and stuff like
Okay.
mid year. So if you're interested, you can
Okay.
go to the link in my bio
Yeah.
and join the wait list for
Okay.
more information on my
Beautiful.
practice group.
Yes. Okay. That's great. Love that.
When is your program opening?
It's opening on the summer solstice. So I'm with like all these moons and all this different astrology. So it's, yeah, June 21st. Mhm.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you. I get it brings up a lot, but it's like you say, it's been a lot to even put it out there. So I'm excited too. I'm excited. And like kind of, I just, yeah, so it brings up a lot of feelings.
I bet, yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be amazing.
Oh, thank you. I do feel like, and I wonder if you feel the same. From what you shared, I'm curious if you feel the same. For me, it feels like this is what I wish was available when I was starting this kind of work. Um, like that is my intention around it, is like to create and hold a space that I didn't have.
Yeah, I love that. I love that intention. And in my honesty, if there was a space like I had created, I was scared of Black women. I wouldn't have joined my own program. If I'm being quite honest with you. Like,
I
you know,
appreciate
and
your honesty.
it's true.
Mm,
It's like the intimacy work I've had to do and the healing work around myself, you know,
mm-hmm,
my
mm-hmm,
culture, my
mm-hmm,
heritage, my background, my intimacy with other Black people, because
mm-hmm,
there's been lots of like, I felt othered in Black spaces. So there's
mm-hmm.
lots of that going on.
Yep.
The intimacy amongst, you know, is it your own, my own, has been a problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a journey with that.
Yeah.
So I love that I have this space and people can join. And if I had this space like 20 years ago,
Yeah.
I, I probably wouldn't have joined it because it would have been too intimidating.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there's just
as
a
you
lot of
say,
layers.
yeah, it's
It's
true.
just
It's
a lot
true.
of
I
layers.
wasn't, I needed to grow into like, well, now it's to hold the space, but even to be in a space like that, I wouldn't have, I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't have known what to look for even, really.
Hmm.
I found the person who had a wide reach with her work. And that's how I got called into like, okay, let me do this work. But yeah, I don't know I don't know if I would have even sought it out. I don't even know.
This is the thing, right? And so, like, in honesty, we're doing this work now. Well, I speak for myself. I'm doing this work now as a part of my healing journey
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
yes, there was harm done to me
Mm-hmm.
within black groups.
Yes.
I felt harm. I felt othered. I felt
Mm-hmm.
judged, belittled, all this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, what was that doing to my sense of intimacy within Black people?
Yeah.
So, like, this group is part of the journey of the healing
Yeah.
that I've been on. You know.
Yeah.
And it does takes time to grow into these versions of ourselves that we might want to be,
Absolutely.
but we have to be where we are at the same time, you know, and deal with where we are as we progress on the journey.
So true. So much wisdom. I'm in it
Too
now.
much, too much wisdom.
Too much wisdom. Oh my God.
I'm an Aries. I can't not tell the truth. It just comes out.
You're Aries, I'm Pisces, so we're like neighboring, but very different.
I feel your Pisces-ness. I
Yeah.
feel your Pisces-ness. I do. I do. I do.
Oh, God, so good. Well, I look forward to our next, whenever we do our next live, and I love the idea of fueling like questions we have. We have so
Yeah, I would love to do that. That would be so interesting.
I know, wouldn't it?
Um, and I also want to talk about pleasure because, like, it's such a juicy, hot topic.
It is. It is. Let's do that.
And so much misconceptions around it as well.
Very true. We'll find it. We'll find it, our time and how it's gonna work.
You'll be like, can we do it on the next red triple super moon? When the equator is and the stars are.
Like there's another potentate coming up. We have to do her. It's so true. It's so funny.
Oh gosh.
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, so people heard, I hope, like where to find you. Just say it again.
Yeah, so Wild Body Wisdom, if you go to my profile, you can click into my link tree and there's like a few things there. There's podcast, there's my Black Women Somatic Practice Group waiting list, and also my website will be there as well if you want to check it out. I have spaces for Black Women and Femmes, but I also work with all outside of that space, so all welcome depending on which space is the right space.
That's good. That's good to know. Actually, it's good for me to know. Also, like, just for having resources for people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's I really enjoy our conversations.
Me too. So good. Oh, thank you. And we'll stay tuned for the next the next eclipse. I don't know what it's gonna be like.
The next supermoon.
The next supermoon. I love it.
Thank you, Sonali. It's been such a pleasure. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too.
Thank you for just being so flexible in the way we chat, and it's been great. And I just love the work you're doing. So
yes,
I'm holding it here for you.
Very proud of us. All right. Until next time.
Yeah. Have a wonderful day.
A wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining.
Yes.
Yes.